All right. Hey, this is Mark Brody with Brohawk Solutions, and I have the distinct pleasure to be here with Micah Peterson. He's with Procedure Flow, and I'd say you're one of the founders of Procedure Flow. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. Part of the co-founding team.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know too much about Procedure Flow, we're going to talk a little bit about Procedure Flow and the space they operate in today, and just have a really good conversation with Micah. For those of you who don't know Micah, probably one of the most laid back guys in the industry that I've ever had the privilege of meeting and knowing, and we've known each other for about 4 or 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we met at a conference and just kind of just connected through LinkedIn and
San
whatnot.
Antonio, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I
Yes, it
remember
was.
the guitar players, and it was fabulous.
Yes,
It was one of I think my second time in Texas, and I had a great time there. I stayed in an Airbnb down there with a family that like toured me around, took me like barbecue restaurants and
really.
everything, and yeah, so I had a great time down there.
So you had your fill of Texas barbecue.
I did, and it was everything that I've heard, and it was awesome. I loved it.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Texas. The Texas barbecue down here, man. I'm telling you, it's you can't. I mean, you can get bad barbecue, but you got to search for
This
that.
was like the smoke. They had the wood smoker, and it
Yep.
was like you could hardly stand in where you purchased, like because it was just the smoke was just rolling out the door, like,
Yes.
and so it was. I was like, we're in the right spot.
Exactly. Plus, you get a few adult beverages flowing, and it's all good.
So,
So, well, hey, Micah, if you could start us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what your journey with Procedure Flow has been.
yeah, sure. So for those of you that don't know what Procedure Flow is, it's a contact center tool that was built by contact center for contact center. Started out as a desktop tool and is now a software application that's hosted in the cloud. And we serve, tons of customers all over the world. So, but I like the Genesis story. So I might, start with my own Genesis story in knowledge management and then bridge it into Procedure Flow. The product itself is really simple. Like it sneaks up on you. It's deceptively simple in the sense that a lot of people will look at it and almost dismiss it out of hand because they're like, this can't be the solution to all the problems we're having operationally, but it is. And so I want to kind of bridge it to that. So I started out, graduated computer science, and I worked at a software company, and I had this really interesting experience too, actually. One was I worked in tech support coming out of university at the software company as my startup job, my first one. And
Uh-huh.
I did all the training. I felt like I was ready. And then the first call came in and I had no idea how to help her, like, even though I had the training. So this guy knew everything across from me. He was on the phone. I've got them on hold. And I just had this deer in the headlights panic moment where I was like, oh, shoot, like this sucks. This feels gross. I don't like this.
Uh-huh.
And so that was my first kind of customer support experience. And that always stuck with me, like that feeling of deer in the headlights. I thought I knew what I was going to be doing from training, and it turns out I'm missing some stuff. Um, then the next experience in knowledge management was I went over. I was working. They moved us around all the time, so we're out in this hallway, and there's a divider, and the guy beside me is pretty smart. I'm pretty smart. I started working on this thing. It took me 2 weeks to like figure out how to solve this issue. And I get done and I'm like celebrating. I get up out of my chair and I'm like, yeah, solved it. And I'm telling the guy about it beside me. And he's like, yeah, I solved that a long time ago. I could have told you how to solve it. And I just
Oh man.
hadn't, I hadn't asked him, and we didn't really have a knowledge base and whatever. So I was like, okay, so knowledge base is like a problem. I started looking into it, like buying a solution, building a solution. And when I went around the building, there had been 3 attempts to make a knowledge base and they had all
Uh-huh.
failed. And I thought, man, that's weird. Like, why do these knowledge base things always fail every couple of years? And that started me on a journey to start my own software company to solve what I thought was the knowledge base problem, which was that maybe the information wasn't in the knowledge base or it's hard to capture it and put it in there. So I
Hmm.
thought maybe if I make a digital highlighter tool where you can highlight your notes, you can extract stuff out, put it in the knowledge base, it'll be a lot easier to um, fill the knowledge base with good content.
Yeah.
And so I started my own startup. I was going out pitching. I built the software myself with my computer science degree. Was shopping it around, and then I found this company in another city that was willing to hire me into their R&D department, work it into that tech support group,
Uh-huh.
and give it a float. So I go in there, they start using it, and all of a sudden I'm like, uh-oh, the problem is not adding information to the knowledge base. The problem is finding it. The problem is searching. And I
Right.
hadn't really, contemplated that before. It was like keyword searching. If you think Alta Vista circa like 1997 or 1998, do you remember
Way
that?
back, way back.
And you do like a search for something, and like it wouldn't come back with like the right results. It would come back with a match, like a
Yes.
text match. And then you at the bottom would be like, then there's a million pages that have this text match, not ranked at all. And so I was like looking at this problem, going like, why isn't this problem solved? You know, because we have page ranking from Google in 1999, and then it hit me. We put a firewall up. There's no organic hyperlinking. There's no blogs. There's no tweets. There's nothing that points to the what's the best one and
Yep.
votes for it. And because there's no voting and no ownership, you don't get ranking. And so behind every firewall in every domain specific area, like your contact center, there's no ranking on the knowledge base. And I was like, ooh, that's not an easy problem to solve. And I researched it, and it's an unsolved problem. So that behind your firewall, because there's no organic links, no ranking, you search your knowledge base, you just get text matches, you get hundreds of results. And so this is why everybody hates their knowledge base. And
Mhm.
SharePoint is kind of the goat for that. Like everybody, because it's the big one that everybody uses, but it's like, why can't I find my information? No page ranking. So I shut it down. I shut my business down, and I was like looking for the next thing. I was
Yep.
in the R&D group, procedure flow. They had built this tool 10 years ago, and what it is small hyperlink flowcharts. And so instead of searching for your answer, you start at the top of a scenario tree, bird's eye view. You look at what scenario am I in, you guide yourself
Ah,
through what exception do I need to handle, and then you're done. And so instead of doing a keyword search on something, you just travel, through a known scenario and exception. When I first saw it, I was like, really, flowcharts? And then I saw a guy using it on the floor, and I was like, yeah, actually, this makes sense. I
yep.
went back, Googled it. Nobody else had built it. So we commercialized it, and kind of the rest is history. But it's interesting just that, flowcharts solve the search paradigm, which is still an unsolved problem.
Yep.
Enterprise search, as it's known, is really a huge unsolved problem because of the ranking. And we basically solved it with arrows, which sounds dumb. It always sounds dumb and weird to say it, but it's like it just works. Like you just follow the arrows,
It's
you
very
go
intuitive,
with the flow. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know. Yeah,
Yep.
I like what you just said. You just go with the flow.
Yeah.
How does a call move from point A to point B? What's a customer's journey?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have alignment between what the customer journey is and what the employee journey is.
That's right.
So you minimize the frustration on behalf of the employee,
Yep.
from being able to find the information that's going to solve that customer issue.
Yep.
Um,
And so in the call center world, what I found, so I left the tech support industry essentially and moved into
uh-huh,
the contact center realm, which they are different. They're similar, but they're different.
yep.
And what's different about the contact center world is that the people don't stick around as long, right?
Hmm.
They might turn over within a 12-month period,
Yep.
and so there's not much you can do about that. People get promoted, the good people get promoted. You manage people out that aren't good or not a fit, and then some people just save up and go to college, and that's
Hmm.
all there is to it. And so you have annual attrition of 30 to 60%. And so
Yeah.
if you appreciate the pain in that industry, it's I'm throwing people onto the phone that don't quite know what they're doing, and now they're struggling. They can't find the stuff in the knowledge base. Even if they did, it's really hard to read it. And so you have this real mess. The first couple of months of an agent's existence is a real mess because they're actually on the phone with customers, but they don't really know what they're doing.
Yep.
And so we in Atlantic, Canada, here where we are, it's a call center hotspot from back in the 90s where we had like um 40, it was like 60 cents on the dollar. So you could
Hmm.
save 40% on your operational costs by sending your call center work to Atlantic, Canada. So about 200 call centers sprouted up here. And so we just drove around the two provinces here, and we're like, hey, you want to buy this thing that we built? And people loved it. We got all kinds of customers, and it radically transformed the way that they do their training and operations and onboarding, and then maintenance and consistency even after the training. So that was really exciting in the early phase. And then we just leveraged those customer success stories to expand out. We serve the fourth largest health insurance provider in the United States, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Texas, and 3 other states. And we have like a webinar with them where they've come on and explained how that's impacted their operations. And it's like, it's kind of surreal, you know what I mean? Like to have started just with this really desktop tool that this outsourcer in St. John where I am was using, to grow it all the way out to, these huge companies with tens of thousands of users in the product.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things that your product does, and it really does create that simplification for the agent. So your computer is not just filled with sticky notes all around it. I mean, it's a nice looking frame and everything. You can do a lot with colors, but I mean, as far as finding the information that you actually need when you need it, it doesn't work that effectively. And plus, with so many people working from home, are you seeing a trend that in with the clients that you serve and their organizations, that work from home really created a larger need for this type of product?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing. I want to talk about a lot of different things there. The first thing I want to mention is that I think it was Warren Buffett, maybe, as talking about investments. He said, "You only know who's swimming naked when the tide goes out."
Yes.
And so it's a funny picture to think about, but essentially, it's like if you're operating in a really thin way already, and then you have something like a pandemic happen, it just exposes all the weaknesses. Yep. And on the flip side, if you've got strengths that you've been building, like let's say you had been really hitting it hard on LinkedIn, your online messaging, digital advertising was great. Pandemic hits, you're doing amazing. Your competitors are struggling, right? Because there's no trade shows and stuff. So it's true both ways. But I think most people had a traditional or still have a traditional training methodology. So again, if you go back to that attrition, there's all kinds of training happening all the time.
Yeah.
You're putting people into a classroom, expecting them to memorize material, sit through lecture style. We know that this generation doesn't really tolerate that anyway. Like they're just sort of checked out. They got phones. Like
exactly.
They know how to stay busy now. So you're competing for their attention, and you're in this lecture style thing that's just decades old. So you take that to Zoom, and boom, the whole thing blows up. It's not good. And we've been sitting on roundtables, hosting a few. Actually, we hosted one for Frost and Sullivan the other week. All these companies coming in, and we just host that so that they can talk about the challenges they're having. People are suggesting things that they're doing, and what you're getting is this boiled down message of like, our training is too long and it's not engaging. This lecture style thing transferred into Zoom's not working.
Yeah.
Now, when the pandemic's over, likely a lot of these places will probably move back to physical buildings and just go back to in the classroom, which is slightly more engaging. I say slightly, really, truly, it's like, it was bad before the pandemic exposed it. Now we're going to go back to it again. So it's like, but it's certainly better than Zoom lecture style, right? And so in that, it's like shorter, more engaging. So the question is, how do you do that, right? And so we went from, so what Procedure Flow helps you to do is scenario-based training, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about. Certainly not a lot of tactics or people talking about how to do that practically. And so if you think, there's always some component of scenario-based training that exists within the onboarding period. It usually comes at the tail end. So we're going to lecture style a bunch of topics, hopefully memorize it all. Then we'll show you how it all ties together. We'll bring some systems up. We'll do a mock call. Here's how this would go down for one scenario, one exception. And of course, there's hundreds of them, so you can't go through them all in training, but it's like, good luck. You know what I mean? Like, have fun out there.
Go forth, do great things.
Scenario-based training is, you've got the system up. It's very close to the environment with the headset that you're going to be in, or chat or whatever. And what you're missing is, what are the scenarios and how do I go through them? Procedure Flow answers that as a visual guide that you can use in real time while you're talking to a customer versus trying to memorize it ahead of time. So you've now, with Procedure Flow, you've handed them, here's 500 to 2,000 different kind of calls you're going to get. Every exception, how to handle it, it's all visual. You can do it in real time. You give them that. So then the only other piece that you're missing to shorten the training and make it more fun and more engaging and get out of this lecture style thing which is not working, is a simulator. You just need to buy a simulator. And so, in the most crudest sense, like you might have Adobe Captivate, where you record an application and it kind of takes screenshots and bridges it together into this click-through thing where people can execute tasks. They're not messing up the live system, kind of, you know what I mean? There's more sophisticated ones like Asima is one that I've come across more recently. So Assima, Asima. And so they are really recording robustly, what those systems are and allowing you to click through it and feel like you're using it.
Yep.
You put that with procedure flow and then you go bring customers calling in with this issue. Let's use the systems, let's use procedure flow, and they do it on their own. If you do that from day one, then you'll learn all the lecture style stuff through it, right?
Yeah.
Within the environment that you're going to be in when you're doing the work. So there's no adjustment period. That deer in the headlights I talked about at the beginning, it's like you're using your knowledge in context, and that experience plus knowledge, that's where the rubber meets the road, and you get a 50 to 90% reduction in your onboarding time, successful agents out of the gate. So when a customer calls in, they don't know whether they're talking to somebody new or experienced because they're all acting and functioning as an experienced agent. So I guess my view of the pandemic is, we went from a priority 8, like priority 1 would be like redoing your CRM, a brand new telephony system, a unified agent desktop, bring a bunch of things in together into one screen. And we were like number 8 on the list of priorities. We went from number 8 to number 2. It was, how do I take calls from home? That was number 1. And then number 2 was, we still have attrition. So how are we going to train people from home? And this is a big problem. So we've been having a great time, during the pandemic, all kinds of interest. We've been getting lots of response, setting up demos, getting new customers, and tons of interest on how do I change this lecture style. So anyway, I did a lot of talking there, but
that's awesome. I mean, Micah, I mean, this tool is from what I've seen, of it, it's a real game changer. And the other thing I like about it is that it's got analytics on the back end, which as a supervisor, manager, director, if your team is struggling from a quality standpoint, or from a CSAT standpoint, you can pretty much narrow down where people are using a tool like this and where they're not using a tool. And the other thing I really like about this is it creates that natural employee engagement where if an agent on the phone sees something wrong, they can actually recommend a change to it. As well, change, and just goes through an authorization process, and then it's spread out like instantaneously. Because using the pandemic example, you don't have MBWA, management by walking around, anymore. And if you do, it's there may be some other legalities along with that. If you got managers walking around people's neighborhoods, I'm just saying. I'm sure there's
a huge challenge.
Big challenge. So the thing I like about it is it empowers agents to recommend changes, and then can also track the effectiveness and efficiencies of those changes throughout the organization as well. Anybody that needs it.
Yeah, 100%. I have a couple comments there, if that's okay.
Yeah, go right ahead.
One is, I'll guess, so 50%. This is my opinion on knowledge management, and I've taken a KCS, or Knowledge Centered Services Methodology certification course back when I had the opportunity to, and it's the world's foremost view. They're on their like version 6 or 7 of best practices for maintaining a knowledge base, essentially. So I would recommend anybody. My favorite guy is David Kay, and he's like the best trainer, and it's built for the tech support industry, but it's totally transferable to the contact center. And I have a video on that as well. Maybe we can share that later, but it's like a 1-hour overview. But essentially, when you think about a knowledge base, one of the failures that people don't think about, and you probably know this by just intuitively, is like, you buy the technology, but you have to have the practice, right? Like, it's like, you don't, when you just buy technology and you think everything's going to be fine,
Mm-hmm.
that's not successful. You've done the right thing, but you have to put the practice around it. And so knowledge bases are no different. You have to have a knowledge management practice around it, and procedure flow is no different. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to maintain it. So I think about this a lot. Why do contact centers exist? Like, why aren't they just all robots? Why haven't they figured this out? I'll tell you why. Because the human brain is the most intelligent machine, most adaptable, the most clever, the most, it's just quick and adept, and it
Mm-hmm.
runs on a ham sandwich. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
after this call, I'm gonna go eat some yogurt and granola, and it powers this supercomputer. And you take a bunch of those supercomputers and you put them in a contact center, and they can react, they can
Yes.
empathize, they can do all this stuff that just robots can't do, right? And so in that space of like how smart the human brain is, essentially you have, I'm going to lose my track of thought here, but it'll come back to me. The Just give me 1 sec.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I mean, to your point,
Are you going to
back
edit this out?
huh? Yeah, back 30 years ago, I mean, when I started in the contact center world, I mean, IVRs were going to take over, and there wasn't going to be any human interaction,
Right.
at all at
Oh,
the contact centers.
it
So,
came back to me.
yep.
So why do you have human beings in the contact center at all? Is because the business is changing. So
Mhm.
sorry for the long pause there. It's like
No,
I
you're
got
good.
excited about that. But so the business is changing faster than the systems can keep up with, faster than the product can keep up with. And so as a business introduces new services, new products, as they change direction, as they acquire companies, as they get sold to companies, there's all this movement that happens within the business,
Uh-huh.
and your customers are exposed to it at a customer care level. There, it's the first line of defense against the change, the marketing. We have this new promotion. Like we're attracting new customers, all this stuff.
Yes.
And so you want that human brain adaptability on the front line. So we've established why human beings exist in the contact center, because
Yep.
the business is changing faster than the machinery. And so in that sense, your knowledge management program, it's sitting still, it's static, right? And so the failure of knowledge base is that you can't keep the material up to date. It's just like the business is changing, it's sitting still. So the human brains are fine, they're on the front line, and they might not be doing it perfectly, but they're adjusting, right? They're like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a new promotion, I guess. So I'm gonna fake this and we're gonna talk about it. And so but the machine can't do that. And so if your knowledge management program is not evolving, then that onboarding will just balloon and expand. You'll have consistency problems, quality problems. It'd be very frustrating for your customers, right? They'll be on
Yep.
hold while somebody's running around inside trying to find the answer. So 50% of the challenge of fixing this problem of onboarding and consistency is making the material consumable. Don't give them text, give them something visual, like a guide they can go through.
Yep.
The other half of the battle is keeping it up to date. And so this point that you made about like, we literally want to flip the whole thing on its ear. And so here's my question for you.
Yeah.
How many people do you think, full-time people, are assigned to maintain the average knowledge base for a given contact center of anywhere from 100 to say 500 agents?
I'd say probably less than a full-time employee.
You're right. It's
Yeah.
it's not a full-time position. It's
Yeah.
usually a part-time position.
Yep.
Very transient, like that. People are coming and going from that role
Mhm.
as they have time. Sometimes like hybrid trainers, business analyst people, but it's, the bigger you get, you can get to a full-time person.
Yep.
And then if you get into really large shops, they'll have a team. They'll have maybe a 10 to 20 person full-time knowledge management team.
Mhm.
But I've never seen more than 20, even at really big scale. And it's probably more like 10. And of those 10, maybe there's like 5 or 2 that are really working it hard, right?
Well, and if you
So
think about it, the need is there because, you don't have somebody that's consistently updating like new marketing promotions or sales promotions or
mhm,
product enhancements or features, bug fixes, regardless of what the product or the industry is.
mhm.
rate changes, whatever the case may be. A lot of that is just done by email today. Or
Yes,
hey, let's
that's
get
right.
on a team huddle.
Tidal wave of emails every day, just like all this
Exactly.
stuff. And it's not read, and it's not consumed, and it's not memorized, and like it's really challenging, right? And then you take new people, throw them in, and tidal wave them over with all these process changes. They don't even have the first one version.
Yep.
Now you're like telling them how version 7 works. And so that when we were first designing the product, we saw this. I knew this, and we saw this opportunity, and we're like, okay, we have to change the game. We have to flip it
Yep.
on its ear. We have to take it from this one person who's drowning in 10,000, 20,000 knowledge base articles that have to be maintained and updated.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to flip it so that 500 or 300 or 100 agents can help to keep this thing up to date, right?
Yep.
And so we created a really layman version of the product where you draft, edit, you can drag and drop stuff, very easy. And so agents can feel comfortable. Not just agents, team leads. If agents don't have time, team leads, they can just raise their hand, tell them. Trainers, quality assurance people, managers, anybody who's involved with the operations can just jump in, pull a draft, point to something, change something. There's a phone number's wrong, the email's not, the link's not working, the email's wrong, and just update it, boom, get it up, get it approved, and it's in. And we did it, like we turned it on its ear. And so this contribution model, we call it distributed revision control in the sense that you can have multiple drafts at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have multiple people working and doing stuff. We merge it together. We take care of all that. That changed the game. So the 50% battle of keeping it up to date. Now you have evergreen flows kind of for two reasons. One is you crowdsourced it. And the second is that because you teased out the logic from a big paragraph of text, which is really hard to understand and update, now it's all teased out and you can see where the mistakes are very easily.
Mm-hmm.
It's that much easier to update. If you can immediately visually understand it, then you can immediately visually see where it's wrong and you can fix it, right?
Yep.
And so that was one of the points that you mentioned. And I just wanted to hammer in that point of like, the knowledge management practice is half the battle. And if your solution can involve the agents contributing, spotting the errors and telling you where they are, and even helping to fix them, you're winning because that one person you have is drowning and they can't keep up. So I also mentioned here that anytime in your onboarding process that two humans are talking to each other, you are losing. That is not scalable. It's not quality. It's not consistent. It's hard to get those two people connected, talking, because, and now that you've got two people that aren't talking to customers, it's really a mess. It's not scalable. You have to have a knowledge management solution that is working, because that will scale with your business and bring consistency and help your onboarding. And so, I've heard some stuff lately, like, oh, we have a Slack channel, or and we just punch questions in there, and it's like, oh no, that's two humans talking to each other. That's so inefficient,
Exactly.
right? That's a nightmare. And so the second thing that you mentioned about reporting, which is really interesting, is of course reporting is always interesting, but one of the epiphanies that I had recently was, you imagine you have a knowledge base article, right? It's just like, say it's 10 paragraphs of text with a reference table, and it's got this title and everything. So if somebody searches, finds that, and let's say the answer's in there and they're going through it and reading it and they're trying to execute on that standard operating procedure, then what do you know from an analytics perspective? What have you learned? You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just going through, I mean, you're learning how to do a keyword search, period.
You see what they searched on. So what keywords did they use to arrive here? So that's interesting data. And then you know that they looked at this knowledge base article,
exactly,
right?
It was so, but you don't know what they did with it.
No, you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're executing. You know nothing, right? And so what we found was really interesting is by breaking out the work of the knowledge base article into small hyperlink flowcharts that are traversable, at each turn and jig that the agents take, that gets recorded, right? And so you see the journey evolving. You can see how long they spent in each section. And now you have really interesting data that tells more of the story, the customer's journey as they're working with the agent, because you can see what the agent's thinking. You can then use that to go back. So now you got two buckets: quality assurance, continuous improvement. On the quality assurance side, your quality assurance people can say, A, were they using the playbook that we gave them? So
Mm-hmm.
were they in there at all?
Yep.
And then B, did they travel down the right route?
Mm-hmm.
And did they take the right turns? Why or why not? How much time did they spend in each section? Average handle time coaching. Why did they get confused here? Fix the process, fix the flows, whatever.
Yep.
So you have all this interesting quality assurance data. On the other side, in the continuous improvement bucket, you take all the paths of the individual agents and you combine that data together and see what are the most trafficked areas. Where do people slow down the most? What kind of calls are we getting the most? Where are they going in the procedure flow to get the most help? Where do they spend, like all of that information at aggregate level helps you to go back to the business and say, we need to change this system, change this process, help the customer here. Seasonally, we're having this explosion of whatever, which, you can combine that with your other data that you're getting and then pull that together into a story that helps the executive make, best bang for buck investments in the business to change it for a better customer experience. And so you can only do that, though. You can only have that kind of reporting if you do the work to make the flows versus just dumping out paragraphs of text, which is the easiest way to write, but the hardest way to consume.
Yeah, and like, I guess a theme that I've heard you refer back to, it has to be consumable.
Mm-hmm.
So if the customer journey and the employee journey going through providing feedback, answering questions, et cetera, if those articles, if those points of entry into procedure flow, it's not consumable for the person. They don't know what to ask, how to ask, when to ask, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to identify very quickly what types of gaps are existing in the overall flow, not just for the customer but also for the employee as well. And it's important that's bridged. Micah, this has been great. I mean, this is a tool that I just don't understand why every contact center isn't using procedure flow, or at least getting a demo from you. How can if somebody wants to learn more about procedure flow, how would you recommend that they reach out and get a demo scheduled?
I would definitely go to procedureflow.com. First and foremost, there's a couple of fun videos there, and you can select your industry even and watch like an industry specific video.
Yep.
They'll give you like a high level view of everything that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that, the distributor revision control is cool because it has side-by-side comparison of the old and new process, highlighted what the differences are. So you can see some of that in the videos. Then there's a little chat pop that pops up in the corner to talk to one of our live folks and just arrange for any questions you have, or if you want to set up a demo. There's a request a demo, fill out a form, and our best guys will come in and give you a grand tour. So that's probably like the best way. And now you can also get like your own access to the environment and try one of the samples and just stuff like that. So that, like I said at the beginning, it's very sneaky, right? Like if you're like flowcharts, I don't get it. And it sneaks up on you because it's really easy to follow. And so just keep that in mind. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, we didn't really talk about much, was like what's trendy out there. You know what I mean? And there's this one frustrating thing that I'm having right now as I'm like talking to people, which is like there's this huge emphasis about like contextual knowledge popping, which it's like it's better than nothing. Maybe it could be annoying, so I'm a little bit cautious about saying like going whole hog on it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
but
go
like
nuts. It's all good.
So like you remember Clippy from the 90s?
Yes.
Are you writing a recipe? I was like, I'm not writing a recipe. I'm doing a school report. Get out of here. And so that's how I imagine the agent experience a little bit. But the failure on that for me is you're guessing.
Mm-hmm.
You're throwing a knowledge base article at them, which they have to read, which is text, right?
Yep.
You're guessing at it. How good is that guessing going to be? Versus, and this is the point I want to make, is like you can build a playbook. You know what I mean? Like football players don't go into the game without you can see the thing on their arm, right? Like it's like they go in with a plan, they go in with a playbook, and it's visual, the arrows and the circles and the X's, and you know what I mean? Like, and you have to help these people's imaginations to get through these scenarios and exceptions. And so why wouldn't you build the playbook that's today invisible, build it out from scratch, give them the playbook so that they can follow it versus just, popcorning stuff at them, hoping that it's going to fix it, right? You can design this better. And so from a trend perspective, I just want to throw that in there, that you might hear about that trend and it sounds cool, and it could end up helping with really simple things, but for the complexity and the systems you have to use, and if it takes 4 or 5 weeks to put somebody in a classroom environment for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week,
Yeah.
it's not that simple. You know what I mean? It's not, it's not that simple. So it really, my emphasis here is like, think about this. Like, we're helping you build a playbook. We're uniquely positioned. We're built by contact center for contact center, and we want to help you with your designing of that playbook.
Yeah, going back to using the football analogy, you don't see wide receivers just running whatever routes they
No.
want to. You don't see.
And then you have the quality assurance machinery afterwards that says, "Hey, dude, you were just running around here. Like, what were you thinking?" It was like, "Well, you didn't tell me what the play was."
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
tribal knowledge is not knowledge management. I'm sorry,
It doesn't.
So yeah, no, this has been great. So couple last questions. So what's a fun fact about Micah that people would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I probably the most surprising one that I get a lot when I get in conversations at trade shows and stuff is that people think I'm maybe a little younger than I am. So I turned 39 this year, and I'm enjoying my last year in my 30s. And I have 7 kids. So we just had our last kid in June of this year.
Congratulations.
And so people think I look young, and then they definitely don't think I have 7 kids. So that's probably the fun fact for your audience here today.
See, I even learned something today.
Yeah. Yeah. And one girl and 6 boys. So it's every day is an adventure, all kind of party stuff going on. And we love it. Like we have 45 acres out in sort of on a lake in the woods, 10 chickens. We're living the dream life here in Canada. So
excellent.
That's a little bit about me.
And so when you get the chance to get off the grid, so to speak, or vacation, or just get away, where's your ideal location?
Okay, so I'll answer that question 2 ways. One is, because we have 7 kids, and I'm not super rich yet. Procedure Flow is growing, and I hope to be a multi-billionaire here soon. But it's hard to put all your kids on a plane. It's just expensive, right? So we've been shuttling the kids in our 12-seater Nissan van down the East Coast. We first made it to Boston for the NECCF association meeting down there. I took them with me, and then the next year we went same show, but we extended down to New York. So last year we made it to New York before the pandemic, had a blast in New York. So we just go places, paint the town red, do all the tourist stuff, throw the kids back in the bus, and come back home.
Excellent.
And so our goal is eventually to make it to Disney. So that's probably like our adventure. And then when you said off the grid, it's funny because like one of my hobby things is actually trying to build a life off of the electrical grid, which Texas folks may be interested probably more in than
too soon.
Canadian weather down there. But practically, just like I cut my own wood, chop that up. We burn wood through the winter time, and we have chickens, and we're doing meat kings this year, and maybe pigs next year. We did 700 pounds of potatoes this past season. The pandemic was great to kind of just have some fun farming. We had lots of time and great weather. So surviving a winter in Canada without electricity, I guess. So that is actually an off the grid hobby that we have.
That is amazing. Hey, and next time I'm back in New England, maybe our paths will cross, and
you should come up here and have some lobster, and we'll take you out. St. John is the oldest incorporated city in Canada. It feels like Boston, maybe like a tenth of the size and scale of Boston, and has that kind of old city charm. So
I was just talking to my wife a little bit earlier today, and I said, "Hey, I'm meeting with Micah from Procedure Flow, and we're just gonna have a little coffee talk." And I said, "We ought to go up to New Brunswick sometime."
Yeah, and Maine is spectacular. Like we're 1.5 hours, from Maine. And they have the Acadia Park there is, you guys have had presidents and all kinds of rich people like just invest in that area, and build it up. And so the Bar Harbor Acadia Park area is beautiful, well kept, one of the best national parks, that I've really seen in terms of its maintenance. So even if you just made it up that far, I could meet you halfway.
There you go. And that's not too far from where family is. So,
Oh, cool.
definitely,
Awesome.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Micah, thank you very much for chatting with me today. I know you're busy, and procedure flow is just booming right now. And I wish you and the company a lot of luck, and hopefully we'll get you back on another episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk here soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for having me. It's always fun hanging out, Mark.
Hey, thank you, and we'll talk to you again here soon.
All right. Take care, man.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Peace out.